So, hey, I'm Zack. I'm on the API team here at Cloudflare. This is Sachin. He's on our UI team. And tonight we're very excited to share with you our recent adventures dogfooding Cloudflare workers in front of both api.cloudflare.com and dash.cloudflare.com. So show of hands if you've heard of Cloudflare workers before or know what they are roughly. OK, so workers allows you to write and run arbitrary JavaScript at the edge. So in every one of our data centers, you can add logic that is specific to your use case, your application, and put all of that logic at the edge where it's going to be the most performant before it even hits your origin. So it's super powerful. Any thoughts of why is this a big deal for us to put it on api.cloudflare.com or dash.cloudflare.com? That's right, because PagerDuty knows my phone number, and I'm super lazy. So we don't want anything to go wrong. So Sachin, take it away.
So as Zack mentioned, we added it to api.cloudflare.com and dash.cloudflare.com, which is basically our dashboard, our two biggest properties. And this is the story of how we added it to both of these properties. And it's exhilarating, and it's really fun, and we hope you enjoy it. So imagine the situation. We have TLS 1.1 and 1.0 that are deprecated and technically insecure. And we need a way to gracefully deprecate it for all our users without breaking them completely. So Chrome will actually penalize you for sending anything lower than 1.2. And we serve millions of requests per day. And having a centralized point of entry for all our requests and serving back this deprecation warning in a graceful way was like a big deal for us. So the problem is basically releasing our entire service mesh is extremely slow. Can you imagine trying to integrate this deprecation warning into every service that we have and every sort of code base that we have and trying to return this response saying, hey, you're using a TLS version that we don't support anymore. Can you please upgrade your version? And we also needed it for PCI compliance, so it wasn't optional. It's not something that we could be like, oh, you don't really have to do this. We had to do this, and we had to figure out a way to do it gracefully. So we came up with a solution, and Zack, the mastermind behind writing this entire worker and figuring out how to write this complex system and break it down into a simple entry point at the edge. So he will basically explain all of that and how we dog-fooded workers and did this gracefully in a nice way.
Thanks, Sachin. So we realized this project of deprecating outdated TLS protocols was a really great opportunity for us to eat our own dog food at scale with workers. It would solve most of the issues that Sachin brought up, right? So for example, we can release new iterations of the worker independently of releases to the service mesh. So we had a lot more flexibility. We also wanted to do this in multiple phases so that it was a really good user experience for our end users. So we had 3 phases. The first phase was let's just log the actual TLS connection info that's coming from the edge and see how many people are still making outdated calls with old clients. And then give that data to CSUP and let them actually reach out proactively and say, hey, this call's not going to work soon. Second phase was just another quick update to the worker is basically saying we want a 24-hour brownout, right? So the worker was coded to know when the 24-hour brownout period started. And so I was very comfortably sleeping in the morning when it started. And it just started rejecting requests that were made with insecure protocols and said, hey, heads up, this is not going to work in a month. And finally, the phase that we're in right now is it's just outright deprecation. So if you try to access api.cloudflare.com with an outdated TLS protocol, you'll get the error message in JSON. If you try to go to the dashboard with an outdated browser, you'll get redirected to a knowledge base article. And so if you want to try this right now, you absolutely can. If you run this curl command and specify that you want to use TLS v 1.0, you'll get back this error. And so this is coming directly to the worker. And the really cool thing about this is running at the edge. So these bad requests never impact the resources of our origin. They never even reach it.
So we have this UI for edge workers, and I highly suggest you use the UI because you can also deploy a worker through the API. But the UI gives you the ability to preview your worker, and it also gives you this nice console on the side that throws errors. So if you preview a worker, you can actually see if you did something wrong and broke your website before deploying it. So this is a nice way to just iterate through your worker and build it out before you actually ship it and have it go to production.
So from doing this over the course of, say, a month and a half, we discovered a couple of useful patterns that we now just bake into all the workers that we ship in front of our services. So the first one is to absolutely put time-bound logic into your worker if you want, and ship it and deploy it in advance. You can have it tested on staging with a different date that's now. You can go and verify the actual functionality that you want. But once you're confident of that, this will allow you to sleep and know that deprecation is going to roll out exactly at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So this is super useful, and we use this now. This became really critical for us. You can't console log in a worker. So there's no way to get the logs currently. It's just not the way that it works. If you're familiar with service workers, Cloudflare workers implement the service worker spec. And so this is a way that we figured out to just make a call to Sentry to their REST endpoint, and we can log arbitrary data. We can capture exceptions that occur in the worker. And the only trick here is to note that the function that actually does the calling of the logging system needs to return a promise. And that allows you to use event.waitUntil to make sure that the runtime does not tear down your worker before your API call to the logging service completes. But this is also super useful because we deploy a worker, we can hang out in Sentry. If there's any issues at all, we'll immediately see it. And again, this is like, we have total flexibility control, don't even need to involve tech ops. And then finally, this is my favorite one. So there are two modes with a worker. You can either fail closed or fail open. Failing closed is the default. If you fail closed and your worker script, JavaScript, does not have any way to capture and properly handle an exception that might arise, that request will die in the worker. Right? So this is what you want if you're using workers for a security-minded application. Maybe you're rejecting bad actors. You have some sensitive web property that you're trying to protect. You might want to fail closed in that situation. For us, because this was an experiment, this is our first time using it, and we're going to put it in front of API and dash.cloudflare.com, it was really critical for us to fail open. And so by setting this flag at the very beginning of your worker script, you're signaling to the edge worker or the Cloudflare worker runtime, if there should be any exception that arises that's not handled by this worker, completely ignore the worker as if it doesn't exist and try to deliver the request as if you would have in the beginning. So this is another piece that allowed us to have confidence that we could deploy updates to workers even if we hadn't really tried it before and were certain that we weren't going to create service interruptions for our users. There were a couple of cool learnings that came out of this. First of all, workers work. Once we kind of got our head around it as a team, it was super useful to us. It's something that's now part of our daily workflow. We served a couple, what was it? 400 million requests in about 2 weeks through the two workers. There's a lot of power and flexibility here, but when you're first encountering the service worker spec, if you haven't worked with it before, which I hadn't, there's things that you need to think through depending on your use case, just to be really careful about handling all the potential edge cases that might not be obvious at first. And then we recommend that you stage your workers in an environment that's as similar as possible to production, and that will allow you to flush out any issues that might occur. If you guys are interested in this, if you want the full technical write-up and the source code for the worker that we have running right now on prod, just Google blog.cloudflare.com and dogfooding Cloudflare workers. We have a recipe exchange that's on developers.cloudflare.com, and I think we also have one on the community now. So if you guys have an awesome recipe or something that you're using workers for, please let us know, and we'll happily include it and give you some credit too. And with that, we'd just love to open it up to any questions you guys might have. Going once, going twice. No? Yes, sir. So that's a great question. Cloudflare runs I'm going to get lambasted for this tomorrow at work, a network of 152 data centers. OK, cool. Still got my job. 152 data centers, just for now, around the world. And so one of the main benefits of signing up for Cloudflare is that when you make a request, and instead of having to transit around the world all the way back to your origin server, Cloudflare will serve the contents of the site or the application of the API from the POP or the data center that is nearest to you. And so that's how we give you a tremendous performance benefit. The edge is no longer a CDN, so it's now becoming this kind of intelligent layer that you guys can script against, and that's really the core value of what Workers delivers. Yes, sir?
It's only 151 data centers. You don't
151. OK, I'm done. So if anyone's hiring, I know JavaScript a little bit, and some Go. Any other questions? All right. Yes, Jade. That aren't from Cloudflare internal. I think the gentleman in the back who asked the first question knows more of those than I do. I think the time-bound recipe I'm super excited about because I think you can do things like we want to have a special flash sale. We want to have a special time-bound registration thing. We want to make sure that it gets released exactly at this time and ends at this time. All of that would be super easy to do in a worker. A/B testing. There's a lot of really cool stuff to explore there. Yes, sir. Powering under the hood. So I'm not totally, I did not write it. My understanding is that it is C++ that compiles your JavaScript in V8. So the script that you write gets compiled to machine code, and it's a super performant runtime. Most requests that go through a worker add only 1 millisecond of processing time. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.